Welcome to StreetSmart live and direct from Puerto Rico. My name's Gordon Holmes. I'm the founder and today's host, and excited to have you all here. Before we start today's special episode featuring TraceSafe, I want you all to take a look at this screen and look at the important disclosures. And without further ado, I want to introduce Wayne Lloyd, CEO of TraceSafe, and Gord Zelstra, who's got my favorite title, Chief Revenue Officer. That's an important one. Lloyd, take it away.
Hey, thanks. Hey, thanks, Gordon. Yeah, I think we could just run through a few of our slides here. If we get those up. Perfect. I can just give you guys some background and context on the company here. So, team here is Dennis and I are sort of co-CEOs. Dennis being the original founder of TraceSafe and the technology lead for the company. Very deep experience in the Bluetooth world, which is sort of one of the core components of our technology package. Dennis, along with Suresh Singhamsetti, are really pioneers in the Bluetooth space and have built this company up, real-time location services platform that's helped so much during the pandemic and for some of these corporates. Gord Zelstra, another key team member. Gord, I can probably introduce later. I think he'll be joining us. Chief Revenue Officer, comes to us by way of, I think he was an early employee at Monster.com, led their global growth strategy, as well as Taleo and SuccessFactors. Those were both acquired, Taleo by Oracle, SuccessFactors by SAP. So he's had a broad experience growing these global expansion strategies for technology companies, sometimes in new and interesting businesses, which I think all of those businesses were. So our market size, we're a enterprise wearable company. And so we're focused on the health and safety tech component. Our quarantine management solution, which is used by governments around the world, that market size is about $1 billion. Contact tracing and sort of the immediate pandemic related solutions is worth about $23 billion. And the enterprise wearables, or the broader sort of extension of that contact tracing and that health and safety, moving into the connected worker category and the enterprise wearable tech, is $60 billion. So we have big markets we're going after. We had a great catalyst with the pandemic to sort of urge companies, governments to adopt the technology, and we can really build additional product lines and solutions and software on top of that in the future. So really, health and safety risks are distracting organizations from their goals and priorities, and we create solutions that solve those risks. So whether that's contact tracing in the workplace, whether that's just ways to get people back to the office. That's what we're focused on. That's our initial product form factor. And we have different, flexible, scalable solutions for different businesses to meet their needs. So, for example, in the construction business, we have a form factor that builds right into a hard hat. In a corporate environment, we have little tags that just attach to a lanyard. And our solution is really privacy focused, and finding a way to fit into the enterprise health and safety solution that is going to, maintain confidentiality and privacy at all times. quickly go through our technology stack. So our hardware is divided into two components. We have a full catalog of wearable technology that includes, the hard hat integration that I mentioned for our construction industry. Includes a disposable bracelet that was used extensively in Hong Kong for their quarantine management and still continues to this day. If you fly into Hong Kong today, you'll likely be fitted with a TraceSafe wristband. So we have all these different wearable form factors. And then on the gateway side, the gateways are the devices that pull the information from the wearable up into our cloud solution. And so we have two of those, depending on if it's a quarantine management solution. And important to note, the quarantine management solution is something that's only sold to governments, and the enterprise solution is sold to companies. And there's a difference between how your location data and your and the access to information there, because when we sell to governments have more ability to get access to personal information in the event of a health. The hospital has more information about you, for example, than your cell phone company has. So that's a medical situation, and those gateways are how we get that data back up to the cloud. On the software side, which is an important growing area for us, we have different applications where that are used to administrate the platform. The user of the wearable does not have to interact with one of these apps on a regular basis. It's a very low touch product. It's sort of designed to become just a part of your workplace uniform or equipment, really fade into the background. So the app is not a massive priority. It's more for the administration. And then our cloud platform is how the whole system is managed. And this is a big part of our revenue story is the fact that we built our own cloud to manage and deploy the solution. And so we can host that on AWS, any major provider. So we fit into the places where the companies are, and as well as on premise. So we're very government friendly there. So our partnerships that we're working on to deploy rapidly are all sort of major integrators in the space. And so they already have deals with major companies, and we integrate our product with them. And so we're working very hard to develop and deploy those integrations very rapidly. And Gord can talk a little bit more about that when he comes on. So our major success stories, as I said early on, we landed the government contract for Hong Kong to run their inbound traveler program for the wearables. So if you flew into Hong Kong, you likely have got one of our products as part of the quarantine program there. For healthcare, we've recently launched a program where we sold into a large conglomerate in Southeast Asia, and obviously a bit of confidentiality around that. And that's our first kind of healthcare mass deployment. And that was so in Hong Kong we've sold just under about 500,000 bracelets, and in Southeast Asia region it's looking about 30,000 units a month. Our average selling price is much higher to that Southeast Asian conglomerate. And then again, on the enterprise side, we have massive deployment of pilot projects around the world. And our first couple pilots have come to fruition, where we're transitioning those pilots into full deployments. So our first one, which we announced quite a while ago, was Bosted Construction. They're large construction outfit, publicly traded in Singapore, and they'll be rolling out our solution to their workforce. And how did we get to where we are? This started out with an idea, an IoT platform. This is back in 2013. There's a lot of platform development. Originally, the product was used as an infant tracking device in maternity wards and hospitals. And that was a great business. It allowed us to build a very durable product that had both high kind of integrative capacity with, at a hospital, you have to integrate with the access control system and all those things, all those sort of things. And keeping privacy, top of mind. So really that initial deployment into hospitals was critical building block to build a highly reliable and scalable platform. And that was deployed into hospitals in New Zealand. But our breakout customer came in Hong Kong with their quarantine management program. And since Hong Kong, we've been able to kind of expand into additional healthcare applications, additional governments, as well as corporates. So we're really kind of at a big inflection moment here with our product and our development and our global expansion. And we're looking to continue that expansion integration into different industries and move more from a hardware only story, which is sort of how we started in Hong Kong, to a massive SaaS play. Unit economics are obvious. When you look at the hardware versus the software, the gross margin difference is quite stark. So you see, the margins in software, and the reason why we would want to move in that direction are obvious. The margins are almost double. And with that, I will sort of stop sharing and turn it over to, we have Gord with us. Great. Hey, Gord.
Hey. Great. So maybe just to expand on a couple of things, and Gordon, it's a pleasure to be with you, not just because you've got a great name, but certainly to tell our story, because I think, as Wayne said, we've got really a unique opportunity that touches many different industries and kind of looks at both sides of the fence, both whether you're in a quarantine management type of consideration or whether you're in a contact tracing solution as well. So as Wayne said, the idea behind it is really to be behind the scenes and to be able to be utilized in any sort of function. I think what we've seen in the market and is really sort of a line in the sand that says, a lot of contact tracing can in fact happen through a mobile app. And I think, as we can all probably imagine at this point, being a number of months into the pandemic, these types of solutions are really only as good for their ability to impact the entirety of the audience that we're speaking to. So if you're on a cruise ship, or if you're at a stadium for a concert or for a football game, or if you are at an enterprise and you're at a workplace, the solution really has to encompass everybody within that consideration. And so the moment that you're just deploying an app-based solution presupposes that everybody there has a workable mobile phone that's not been left in the car, that's up to date, that's often running, that's connected to a cell connection, that has the app running in the foreground, that's on the latest and greatest software. There's a whole bunch of different problems, and we can kind of just go through demographic profiles and things like that to know that not every child will have access to that. And so the nice thing about our form functions, as Wayne talked about, is we can utilize a wristband type of consideration and make this really easy to put on every attendee or a contractor that's walking into our office for just a short visit or to do some sort of a meeting. We can also put a clip that allows employees to be able to have this on their lanyard or clipped onto them, that would allow them to be able to track who they've been in contact with through the course of their day and moving around the office environment or the factory environment or the workplace. And so as we go from industry to industry, there's literally no industry that we can't impact. And that's really been our strategy around, how do we build revenue? How do we grow revenue through this? So you can attack this a few ways. The first one you can do is you can literally throw a lot of salespeople at the problem and open up conversations and to be able to start those dialogues with literally every company. Or you can take a focused approach that says, where do we have some opportunity to have influence and have impact? So we've started with this approach today that allows us to be able to impact workplaces through some of the largest software vendors that exist in that space. So we've got some key vendors, and some of those logos will look familiar to many of you that Wayne was able to show, that deal with things like time and attendance, or that deal with payroll, or that deal with performance management and things like that. And so by tying in or integrating with those types of platforms, our solution becomes part of the benefit. And it also becomes part of the stickiness, to not just make this a COVID-related solution, but to be able to be impacted through the entirety of the workforce. We also see some great opportunity in going into some more niche industries. So last week I was able to kind of participate virtually through understanding a film production studio and see how, film, who have, hundreds of millions of dollars of budgetary and a lot of logistics challenges, the impact of them being shut down because of one suspected impact. Obviously, you can see the ability of putting a solution like this allows us to deal with not just indoor facilities and studios, but fairly complex working environments. Because we've got a great story in Singapore with our construction client, we've got the ability to kind of move into maybe some very loud, noisy outdoor environments as well. So we're extending that into oil and gas and mills and factories and places where forklifts are driving around. But we also see this as an opportunity to kind of extend it into like cruise ships. And how do you take an industry like that obviously is, is kind of a poster child for how do you actually get this particular industry back up and running? And I think it's going to be with a combination of a solution like TraceSafe, bringing it back to operation and making people feel comfortable about their safety as well. So I'll pause there. I don't know if there's any other questions that we can kind of drive through with at that.
Gordon, any commentary there?
No, I think that was great, guys. Maybe it's time to introduce Chris Temple. Chris is a newsletter writer and has picked up TraceSafe. So maybe we'll let Chris come on now and talk a little bit about his newsletter and then why he likes TraceSafe.
Well, thanks, Gordon.
Chris,
it's nice to be
aboard.
here with you and with Wayne and Gord and give a little bit about my own perspective. When I first started to hear about this story, I was a little resistant, I have to admit. And I think it's because, like lots of people, I sometimes look at things as I want them to be and not necessarily as they are. I've shared with, I think, all three of you in the past in our discussions. Once upon a time, I had a stretch for most of the 1990s when I probably was on airplanes more than I ever was in my life before or since, almost weekly. I'm flying in and out of someplace, most of that time living out in the Flathead Valley of Montana and going in and out of the regional airport there outside of Kalispell. And literally, guys, there were times that, and in those days, we didn't have our smartphone with the ticket on it. We had the paper ticket that the travel agent gave us. And there would literally be times, many of them, where I was running late. I had dropped my luggage off out front, and I'm waving to the gal behind the Delta counter as I'm going right past her to get on the plane. Out in that neighborhood as well. I played hockey. I coached hockey. My kids were all into hockey. And we went back and forth to Canada regularly. And there were times I literally didn't put my car in park going across the border. Those days are gone. We won't ever see them again, unfortunately. And it's because of a pivotal and horrific incident that changed all of our lives that happened on September 11, 2001. We all remember that. It changed everything. It changed security. So back in those days, rather than just say, oh, our civilization is gone, things are terrible, and yes, there's a lot of bad things that happened in response to that, we had to deal with reality. And Ron, if you could put this up real quick, some of you have heard of a Taser. At the time of 9/11, going back almost 20 years ago, this kind of like Microsoft's story was literally a family company that started in the Smith family's garage in Scottsdale, Arizona. Everybody since has come to know who Taser International is. They now are one of the biggest companies out there in what they do. And the stock, I have to confess that after being the first one in, I was one of the first ones out when it hit one of those early peaks there. So we had a couple dozen times our money, but boy, what it's done since then, especially in recent years when now they've come out with all different kinds of products. So point being that when things come to change our lives, disrupt our world, some are good, some are bad. We've got to accept facts and reality as they are and realize that in our present case, that no matter what any of us think, and those of you who are on this video right now and watch the recording know a lot of my views about what I often derisively call the pandemic that we have. Whether I agree with what's going on or not, we have a reality now that we are going to live with yet more and new disruptions to our lives, disruptions to our style. We've been going through it all this year. So when I first came to understand that TraceSafe has a way around a lot of the key objections to this, it really started to get my interest heightened. It broke down my own defenses and trying to figure out, okay, well, this is going to have to happen. So who's got the regimen? And you guys did mention this, and of course, we're on limited time today. There's a lot more research people can do with any of us on here. But I never stopped to think that what TraceSafe is doing is what I have done in my life numerous times. I live 2 hours from Disney. Don't go there much, but you know what I have to do every time I go there? I've got to put a wristband on. You know what I have to do when I go to a concert? I've got to put a wristband on. You know what I did recently when I had to go to the hospital for some outpatient surgery? I got a wristband on. This is something that people are used to. And you guys both mentioned this, but I hope that one of you would expand just a little bit on the distinction, because this is big, and I think a lot of people still don't understand this. The distinction between your cloud platform and how it interacts in an isolated individual setting with your wristbands, and what the big tech companies already tried and failed at, but being the Apples and the Googles of the world, where you can't have this as part of a smartphone or bigger basis like that. So one of you guys want to tackle that and make the comparison?
Yeah. Wayne, did you want to?
Well, I mean, I could quickly, speak to that. I think that early on we saw Google, Apple alliance around Bluetooth tracking on phones and sort of exposure notifications, and I think early there was a lot of interest in that plan, and Norway, Singapore, Germany, Australia, they all signed up, and we haven't been hearing a lot about that. And I think the reason being is that there are certain challenges unique to cell phones. Not everybody has the latest and greatest phone. Not everyone has a very super expensive iPhone. So you have challenges with the different types of hardware and keeping those. It's the latest software, the latest tech to make these things run, but not everyone has the latest phone. And then combine that with the privacy watchdogs giving oversight on these issues, and you have a recipe for very low compliance. So I think in Singapore, which is sort of known for having a nice nationalistic movement, when they initially launched an app only it got to about 22%. It was only after they launched the wearable alongside it that they got any traction. And we don't think that this is something that a national government can necessarily solve at a nation state level because of all that kind of coordination and compliance. We think this is something that gets solved, workplace by workplace, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, at a more decentralized level. And we give those tools. Our platform really helps those companies and workforces do that. Gordon,
yeah, and just to expand upon that, I mean, I think that there's a whole other element when we get into the workplace. I mean, we've kind of come to assume that employees might be provided with a cell phone, if not by paid for and that sort of thing. But there's many workplaces where it's just unsafe to be carrying around a cell phone while you're working on an assembly line, or if you're working with dangerous equipment or a distraction or in a laboratory environment. And so there's a whole lot of those types of issues that come into it. But I think, the beauty of the combination of both the hardware solution that makes it as easy as possible for everybody to wear that, and then behind the scenes, this software solution that gives the data that is important to system administrators or property management or human resources to see which employees could in fact be impacted by one person who might be infected or otherwise. And to be able to just sort of understand that, flag it, so that if there were 30 people that I came into contact with under CDC, considerations, instead of closing down my entire plant, instead of shutting my doors down both to revenue and all of the other benefits that we're trying to derive, that I can really pinpoint the problem, give the proper notification to those people that are potentially impacted, and to be able to solve those problems immediately. And it's that combination between software and hardware that allows us to have the greatest amount of utility, but also a lot of great data elements to be able to provide a complete holistic solution.
Well, and that's what I think. I'm sorry, Wayne.
Oh, just going to add, Chris, your example of Taser is really important. In the wearable category, we sometimes hear the criticism, that these are sort of products that are easily copied and can sort of be there's not much of a moat around them. And there's a similar idea in sort of the defense and weapons world. There's certain things you can copy. There's certain things that you have to patent, and there's certain intellectual properties. But really, the power behind a Taser or any of these companies that have taken a product that had a breakthrough moment and really seized on that momentum is they really build a product behind the product. So you have the product, and that's the thing that you sell, and then the other product, in air quotes almost, is the machine and the organization to distribute and get that product into the hands of the right people and move that product through the market. And that's really what we're doing here, is that the wearable space really has this massive catalyst in the pandemic to move through the workforce. But that's not going to happen without building a great distribution, sales force, and partnerships. And that's the most important thing. So that's almost a product in and of itself that the company builds in the background to get market success. And so that's really, we definitely have a two-track focus, one being on product innovation and meeting the needs of our customers, and second on building the machine that actually distributes and gets that product to those customers. That's a very important thing and a big differentiator. Anybody can put together a little bit of tech, but how you actually grow that into a sustainable, long-term, successful business is a much bigger thing.
Well, and that's why it was so important when you brought Gord on board, and that's why that title of Chief Revenue Officer is Gordon's favorite title.
And to that point, Gord, if you could talk, one of the things that has impressed me is, you started with Hong Kong, and I think the original order was maybe 2,000, bracelets. And now I think Wayne said something about 500,000. So as I have watched you guys, it starts off with a test. So my question would be, give a couple of other examples like Hong Kong that have gone from, a low-level test to a big deal. And then how many customers do you have currently evaluating testing? And, what sort of, success rate? I don't think it's a 2% success rate. I think it's probably closer to the 98%. So if you guys could give a little color on that, I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of a couple of considerations out there. I think we're talking with a lot of organizations that really need to make decisions fairly quickly about this as cases ramp up and the threat of cases ramp up. They just don't want to be stopped, and it may not be from a force within. It may be through governmental forces and things like that. And so trying to get ahead of this. And so while we have a lot of organizations that are in a research state of mind right now to kind of say, help me understand this, help me be educated in some of the different solutions that are out there. We have many of those conversations throughout the day. And then, as you rightly said, Gordon, it's kind of, okay, I want to embark upon a test. And maybe I'm an organization that has 30,000 people, or, and we want to basically look at one of our locations or a smaller subset of the employee base or one floor within our office building. And so we've literally gone through dozens of those types of examples where the opportunity to kind of test it and to be able to say, okay, there's a couple of pieces of machinery that we need to send out to you, and it allows us to get some wristbands on people or to get some clips on people, and then also to try out the data. Some of those conversations or pilots last for about a month, and some of them go into 2 months, and it's kind of like taking a look at the data or looking at ways in which we can integrate with other systems that they have. And others, like an example that we had just a couple of weeks ago, was it started with a really small order of less than 100, and that order from first conversation to 100 was inside of a day. And then we go through some agreements and things like that, ship it out, and then the order goes from that to 19,500 in the span of literally a week and a half. So that type of example, we believe we're going to start to see some more of those types of examples where people get a good idea of how the technology works, start to appreciate the data that comes in from it, and be able to understand that yes, indeed, this works for every employee that we have there.
Great. Chris, I know you've had a recent success, Piedmont Lithium. A little company, I think it was Tesla, signed a deal. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where do you see TraceSafe? The stock, has been, all the way up to $1.70. It's currently in a base, and we'll look at a chart in a minute. But what are you telling your subscribers? What are you looking for here?
Well, when you ask where I see them, I tend never, or I shouldn't say, I never say never about anything. I seldom put target prices on anything. I get my head as best as I can around a story, around a theme. And if I see forward progress being made on monetizing that theme, then I just start to extrapolate and say, okay, well, what can they do? In the case of Piedmont went from $5 or $6 this summer to near 50 a couple of different times. That to me is not necessarily expensive when you look at what their business is. Tomorrow, you and I are going to have an interview with Omanika Mining and Metals, another big score for our subscribers this year. And that stock went from a nickel to around 40 cents. And there as well, when you look at the story, it hasn't met its expectations and its potential yet. So when I look at a TraceSafe, especially with the share price bouncing, it went up, it came down, went up, came down. I pay less attention to the share price, Gordon, than I do just looking at the story, looking at the several recent announcements they've made where they're starting to gain some traction. They're starting to gain market share in an industry, as I alluded to a few minutes ago. And this is really key. This is a kind of a simple thing I try and get my own pea brain around once in a while. This is going to be with us for perhaps the rest of our lifetimes. Everybody on this call, everybody watching this broadcast. So when we realize that just like there are things that we now live with 20 years after 9/11 that haven't gone away, and there are companies like Taser, but there's others that kind of made their bones on that incident. There are going to be those companies that will have their birth and future success based on the new challenges that the world has given us. And I see a lot of upside. I can't put a target price on, but you know, I sure as heck would be telling people to be buying with both hands right now.
Great. Wayne, Gord, do you have any final wrap-ups as we conclude, and then we'll look at a chart and call it a day?
No, I think we've had some major success. We've proven ourselves able to deliver on big government contracts, big healthcare contracts, and now big corporate contracts, proving product market fit, proving that our supply chain ops teams are able to scale up the strategy very well, and consistently landing these big deals has been a lot of work, but very fulfilling. And we now have those proof points around what we've been able to accomplish, as well as having a huge pipeline built up to continue on that path. So that's what I would really focus on, is that we've already had a huge amount of success, and you're going to see that success reflected in our financials very soon. And I think people are going to be, I think it'll be an important point to look at how much revenue potential there is in this business.
And I might just add, just as Chief Revenue Officer, Gordon, that a lot of this has been in many thanks to a lot of our investors who've not only taken an interest in the stock and in the company, but taken that extra effort to introduce us to their acquaintances, their friends who are running businesses, who are facing this challenge head on, and giving us a ring and saying, "Hey, can you help out my friend? Hey, can you help out my company?" And we've had just a wonderful impact from our investor community and our friends and supporters around the world to be able to say, yes, we've got a solution that we can churn out today that can show measurable impact for that. So would love for your viewers and readers to be able to assist wherever they can, and that's my sales pitch for this particular call.
Great, Gord. Thanks for that. And I guess it's time to look at a chart. Today's chart comes from Clive Mond, somebody I talk to on a regular basis. So I don't know how many of you can read this, but it looks like it's building a base and waiting for some exciting news, just like I think the rest of us. So with that, I think I'll call it a wrap, and really appreciate everybody taking time today and coming on the show. Look forward to seeing you back again. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Gordon.
Thanks.